Hi, I'm Patricia Durgin. My guest today is guest author and radio show host, Richard Rossi. Hey, Richard, how are you today?
Hey, Patricia, thanks for having me.
You are so kind. I appreciate you helping me work behind the scenes so we can get this thing rolling.
Yes, I'm not a techie, but we figured it out.
Yes. So I want to talk today. I'm going to just give you sort of the sequence. We're going to talk about your music and your acting and your books, and you've got a special program or a special project that you've got near and dear to your heart. We're going to talk about that. That'll be closer to the end to keep everybody engaged, all right? So you got to stay till the end. You're an actor, an author. I'm not going to get them all. A filmmaker, a musician, a comic, a painter, and a poet. How do you do all those things? You don't do all those things in one day, do you?
No, I try to go with the passion of what I really feel the passion for each day. You know, there's a scripture in Philippians that says God works in us to will and to desire his will. And so that burning flame that we all have kind of guides us what to do, I think, each day. If, you know, I like to have that morning time and try to have that quiet time to figure out what's my priority today. But all the arts, I believe, come from the same seed, which is God is the master artist, the creator. Another word for creator is artist, of course. So I think when we work on our creativity in any one area of life, you know, it could be cooking, it could be writing, it could be filmmaking, it could be drawing, that spills over and makes us more creative in other areas. But with a big project, though, I think you do have to sometimes feel like a film is such a huge project. When I'm working on a film, it's so gargantuan. Sometimes I do have to I'm not a hunter myself, but a friend of mine that's a hunter said that when he shot at a flock of quail, he would not get one unless he focused on one in his sight, you know. So sometimes I think we have to focus on something to finish it.
That's really interesting. I like that concept.
Yeah.
And
so he would tell me, get the quail. He'd say, when he would see me doing 20 things at once and not finishing the film, he'd say, get the quail. And I'm not a hunter, but I knew what he meant. Yeah.
Yes. Our friends can talk shorthand to us, can't they?
Yeah.
So when you're doing your poetry and the various things, do you find that also that Christ gives you seasons of life for those projects? You can't be a filmmaker and a poet at the same time. Those are diametrically opposed.
Yes. There's times where one is stronger, and I live in California with a high standard of living also. So as a creative person, sometimes you have to have multiple. I like, when I was a little boy, I liked the Ed Sullivan Show, and they'd spin all these plates at once, and you have to have enough streams of income to survive as a creative person, because very few on any one project or any one thing can survive. So, you know, you have all those streams, but then there's seasons, like you said, that's a good word, seasons where one is more focused. You know, I could look back on my tracking my work or income and see, oh, these few months it was music, or these few months it was more the acting, you know, that, but it is definitely a faith walk, because I mean, I have friends that said I can never live that way. I need to know every Friday I'm getting this check from the DMV where I work, you know, for this amount of money. But I think if we do follow the creative instincts, that's the image of God. God is the creator, and that creativity in you, Patricia, and me, and everyone else, that creativity is, I think, one of the best, you know, witnesses or demonstrations of the creator.
Yes, I agree. And you've lived this kind of lifestyle for a long, long time. So you're accustomed to it, aren't you? The ebb and flow.
Yes, I am. You know, in my younger adult years, I was a creative person as a boy. I was playing out in clubs, making money as a guitarist. I became a born-again Christian in my teens, and I was focused more on like my young adult years on the ministerial work, although still creative. I was making evangelistic films. But the shift to more of a creative identity really picked up when my wife and I moved to California with our two children, who were young then, who are now adults now.
Was that because of the environment, or just because that was in that time in your life?
Well, there was a tension that happened when I was pastoring, in that I was starting to write films. I was having people fly me out to California to meet with people at studios on certain scripts I wrote. And I was starting to see a lot of my creative passions come to the forefront. And there was a tension among people that wanted me to just be the pastoral person to them and kind of hold their hand through their crises of life and things like that. And they, I think, were like jealous over, oh, why is he flying out there and you know, doing these creative things? And, you know, then we, you know, we went through a real dark night of the soul. A lot of things were written about us that weren't true in the media. About 90% of it wasn't true, but it felt like as a family, we needed a fresh start. And my wife was from California. And so this was such a natural environment for my creativity that I started meeting actors. I started meeting celebrities and ended up kind of ministering to a lot of celebrities who had also been through some of the things I'd been through. It kind of started to pick up steam in California. I mean, so many people come to California. There's like just all that thing of the gold rush. I mean, for so long, people come here to reinvent themselves and to try something new. So it became a very natural, my creativity was more accepted here, I would say. It was more, it fit the culture here more. Whereas my hometown at the time was Pittsburgh. It still will always be home, but Pittsburgh does not, you know, innately or support creativity or being different. It's like some of the fast food places would test a new sandwich in Pittsburgh because they would literally say if they'll try something new there, they'll try it anywhere. Whereas California, it's all about create something new. And every person you meet here has a screenplay or a book manuscript in their drawer, you know, every waiter, every person serving you coffee, you know. And if they find out you've made a film or put a novel out or something, then they're all, can you help me, you know?
Yeah. Sounds like Christ opened that door both to your creativity and to California before you needed to be able to move your family. Yeah. And then it was just a natural segue, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, actually, when it started to happen. I wrote a script about a female evangelist with a healing ministry, Catherine Coleman, and that script had got a lot of interest. So I was flown out here. I met with people at Disney Studio and Joel Silver, who made Die Hard, different people. And I was put up at I think the Beverly Hills Hilton it was. And at the time, the church I was pastoring in Pittsburgh, there was this kind of grumbling about what's he doing out there with Hollywood people. That's Sodom and Gomorrah, you know. And one of the deacons trying to calm the flock where I was the pastor said, it's not like he's going out there and going to Disneyland and just having fun. He's trying to spread the gospel with this script. Well, in one of the script meetings, a big director said, you know, I have to make some changes on this script. The character of Catherine is too much of a martyr and you don't have the 3-act structure clear enough, blah, blah, blah. Well, I was this idealistic person thinking, oh, God has given me this script and I can't be changed. It's like the Bible, you know. So I walked out of the meeting because I had it in my head from a lot of my fundamentalist Christian friends. Hollywood's evil. They're going to try to change everything. So I said, you cannot change a word of the script. God gave it to me. And I left the meeting. I said, I'm going to go to Disneyland. I went to Disneyland. So when I got back, one of the first things I said was, you know, they did try to change it, but I stood my ground and I just went to Disneyland, not knowing that the deacons would calm the church. He's not just going out to California to Disneyland to play around. So, yeah, there was this tension happening, but I was also kind of starting to go towards California.
Yeah. Well, let's back up just a minute and talk about your music. I know that both of your parents were professional musicians. And how many instruments do you play?
Well, guitar is my main instrument. I play. I do teach and play multiple instruments. I have students on guitar out here in California, and I also teach at a local college here in California. I teach a guitar class at Valley College. I have guitar, keyboard, bass, drums. I have students on ukulele. That's been a little bit of a fad with some of the younger adults now, is the ukulele. But guitar is the main instrument. Yeah, but I think once you know how to read music and you have an aptitude for it, you can kind of segue into other instruments.
I've heard that. I don't have that gift at all. It goes right over my head, but I have heard that many, many times by people who knew what they were talking about. You know, not Billy Bob who just picked up a guitar, but somebody who was established and knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your acting. You've acted on several television shows, then you've been a featured guest on several others, major news shows. You're comfortable in front of and behind the camera, I see.
Yeah, I have been in front of the camera and behind the camera, and I still get nervous doing it every time, even right now. I mean, I was nervous about doing this, but I've played thousands of gigs on the guitar, and I still get nervous every single time. But I've heard that can be a healthy thing, and you can channel that. And I think part of it is God giving you peace and calm about it, doing healing in our lives. I mean, I had a lot of self-loathing that God's had to heal me from. And so, like, for instance, if I do something in front of a camera, I couldn't watch it. I mean, for years, I wouldn't look at it, a video of myself or something like that. But I realized some of that is, childhood abuse, self-loathing, needing healed. And I noticed others who have come from abusive backgrounds, including my wife, where it's like we're uncomfortable with pictures of ourselves, that sort of thing. But as we get healed and learn to accept God's love for us and learn to love ourselves, I think it gets better. But I have been in front of the camera and behind the camera a lot. You're right.
And even on stage, you both direct plays and star in them, don't you?
Yeah. I like theater a lot. I like the live aspect of theater, where if you mess up, it's all out there, baby. There's no cut. There's no retake. You got to figure a way out of it. If you have to improvise a line, or if someone in the cast with you forgets a line, you got to kind of feed them their line in a way that hopefully the audience doesn't pick up on. So it's kind of dangerous in that sense. You could really, live theater is just so scary in that way,
Do you get the same butterflies for live stage work?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I like the improv and the flow with it, whatever happens, nature of it. And I'm like that as a preacher too. Like, as a preacher, I tend to try to read the room and get a message from what I feel the Holy Spirit wants to say to the group. I liken it to a doctor. A doctor doesn't give the same prescription to every patient.
Yes.
And some preachers will just, okay, I'm preaching through the book of Romans, and they always just pull out the sermon out of the file. But I try to read the congregation. What do they need? What should we talk about? And I try to do the same in live theater, where if something needs to be modified in the moment on stage or to make it fresh, I like that aspect of it,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your ministry for just a little bit. You say that you are, where is that? That your sermons are Thespian. Now I know what the word Thespian means, but how does that relate to your sermons?
Well, I think storytelling and acting things is very good to keep the audience now. I mean, we're in a culture where Christianity and the Bible are not as respected as they used to be. I guess I have a real strong gift of evangelistic gift, where I'm good at talking to people that aren't Christian and getting them interested in talking about spiritual subjects. So I found that if I was just talking to evangelical Christians, I could just say the Bible says this, the Bible says that, the Bible says this. But to draw others in, I think storytelling is very important. In fact, Jesus was such an artist and such a storyteller with all the parables, right? Yeah. So like my sermons tend to be, I mean, I do get to verses in an expository, what does the Bible say? But getting there, I like to do stories that are very universal and draw people in, into it, and talk about stories that everybody would relate to, and use humor and things that are very, everyone could relate to. So a lot of Christians, we're in a culture now with a lot of very militant and vocal atheists and skeptics and cynics. And so I think like creativity in a Thespian style, for me, it's real important, because otherwise they would say, we're just have a circular argument. We're just quoting the Bible. And one thing I like to do is quote something with the Bible that's just so relevant and so Holy Spirit and so for the moment, and then watch the person say, wow, that's powerful. Who said that? Where's that from? I'll give you an example. A very well-known celebrity lawyer friend of mine who's not a Christian, has never been around Christianity, comes from a Jewish background like me. My great-grandmother was Jewish, so comes from that culture, but had never really heard much of Jesus. And he was working on a case where he needed sympathy for his client, who and I said, and people were judging this client, not really understanding what they went through. And I said, let him that is without sin throw the first stone. He was like, oh, that's so good. Where does that come from? I said, Jesus said that. Really? Wow. What else did Jesus say? And we have a family night every Friday night. We've done it for years. My wife and 2 kids and I will go out to dinner. And it's sacred. No one ever goes with us except our family. But he said, could I please come to your family night and talk to your family more about what Jesus says and what Jesus means? And here we are with this famous celebrity lawyer who's never even been in a Christian church. But because I did it in a way where I was putting the truth in there in a way that fit the story of his case, and I didn't shove it down his throat that the Bible says, then he got curious. It's like we're the salt of the earth. The salt makes people thirsty. He got thirsty to know, well, who said that? And tell me more about Jesus, you know? So I think there's a way that we can do it that makes people thirsty and hungry.
I agree. And Jesus tells us to do that, doesn't he?
Yes, yes.
Draw people in, don't push them down.
Right, right.
And from what I'm understanding, the people that he gives you to serve out in that, in the California arena, they really, everybody responds to stories, no matter where you are, ethnicity, gender, culture, country. But those people, I'm guessing, are even more sensitive to that.
Yes, because most of them are in the storytelling business too, you know. And it's so universal. I mean, from the time we're little children, I remember sitting with my grandmother on the glider, and she would tell me all these stories, and I believed them. I mean, when the thunder would be loud, she would tell me the angels bowl in heaven, and they just got a strike. And I believed it. It was such when you're like 4 years old, that's a great story, right? Yeah. And she would tell me all kind of things like that. Or when it was raining, the angels were crying. And I just love hearing her tell her stories, you know?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And also, before I change to another question, stories help us remember what the person said, don't they? They bring it home and apply it to our life, and they sink into our heart.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. It helps me a lot. Like, for instance, I had on my podcast yesterday, actor named Don Robb, and he was a pastor and missionary, and then he got into writing, and he just put out a collection of a couple short stories as a book. And his stories really hit me with, like one was about a Roman soldier who witnesses the resurrection, who was guarding the tomb. And it made the resurrection very fresh and alive for me. I think part of it is, you know, I'm a person who had a lot of damage as a child, a lot of abusive things I had to recover from. And so there's a part of me that's kind of like a frozen little child within a man's body. And when I, for some reason, stories seem to get to my heart, sometimes even much, much more than a preacher just preaching at me, you know. It feels safe to me. I mean, I have a master's degree in biblical studies from Liberty University, so I know the Greek and I've read the Bible cover to cover numerous times. But for some reason, a story or an artistic thing or a childlike, I mean, sometimes even children's praise songs will hit me because there's like this little child inside, you know, that's simple. I mean, just like Jesus loves me, this I know, keeping it so simple seems to get to me. And I love stories for that reason.
Wow, I like all of that. I like everything you just said. I want to talk about your blog talk radio show, but before we get there, let's talk about your books. You've written 3, one in 2011, one in 2012, and one in 2013. Tell me about those 3. One's a novel.
Yeah. That was my first book, Stick Man. My dad died, and it was pretty devastating for me. And that novel was kind of my therapy. I wrote it, it's a coming of age story about a young man whose dad dies, and it's his journey towards turning 21 and becoming an adult. And I had a nightmare when I was a little boy, and I had terrors one of these frightening things was Stick Man, this kind of demonic thing. And I had a scary experience in church as a little boy. My mother took me to Mass in Westview, PA, St. Athanasius Church, and I saw the crucifix and Jesus on the cross, and the preacher was preaching something about hell and sin and things like that, and purgatory and God's judgment and all that. And I remember I was very frightened, and I started crying, and just remembering the sticks. And so I would have these nightmares about the Stick Man made out of the sticks. And he had the nails of the cross were his claws, and it was coming after me. And so it's kind of a very subconscious metaphor for when religion is scaring us rather than showing us God's love. And but that novel also helped me process my dad's death. And it was I wrote just a little short story about the little boy being scared in the church and in the nightmare about Stickman and contemplating the cross. And a novelist who's a really esteemed novelist named Jim Crusoe read it, and he said to me, "This is very powerful writing. I want you ought to keep writing this story." Mm-hmm. And so I was not in a great place mentally, quite frankly, but it was my therapy more than anything else. And now I get a lot of letters from people that were in abusive church situations or had very difficult childhoods, and a lot of young people really like Stickman. I've done these kind of chats. I'm not very technical, so sometimes I go over to someone else's house. Hey, you're breaking me in to do it myself. I don't think I've ever done an interview myself figuring out the camera. Normally I go over to someone else's house for the Skype book club interviews, and they set it up. But a lot of teens, a lot of book clubs with young people like it because I'm very honest about how hard it is to grow up in the novel Stickman.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that. And this 2011 was when it was released, and it's still selling and affecting people's lives.
Yeah, I get letters. It hints at some pretty tough stuff in Stickman. I mean, the abuse is not the focus, but there is sexual abuse in the different things that are in the story. One of the difficult things that the young man growing up has to process is a pastor who is preaching the gospel turns out to be an abusive person and a pedophile with a minor. And this shakes him up because he wants to believe in God and Jesus, but yet here's this person that he looked up to for talking about God and Jesus, and he's done this, which is, of course, in the news now a lot about pastors and priests that have preyed upon young people. So there's some pretty heavy themes, but I think the message of the novel is very strong, that it's about our connection with God directly. There's one mediator between God and man, the Bible says, Christ Jesus. And so he learns that he doesn't have to put any man on a pedestal, that he can go directly to God and experience God's love directly. That's a pretty big message, I think.
Yes. Now, you've also written one about, your last one was about Sister Amy, but before the Amy Semple McPherson story, but really I'm interested most in Create Your Life, Daily Meditations on Creativity. What is that about? Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm almost done with a sequel to that called Artist's Guidebook. But Create Your Life came out of the fact that a lot of people were contacting me who had just needed encouragement about their own creativity, their own writing, putting their work out there, marketing their own work. And many, like me, had come from a fundamentalist religious background where creativity was judged and oppressed. And, in fundamentalist circles, a lot of times there's a lot of judgment. Like for example, when I was in those circles, I've written over 1,000 songs, but sometimes I would write a song that was a gospel song about, invite Jesus in your heart and a new life will start. And they're like, oh, that's a great song. But if I wrote a song about something else in life or a love song or something, well, that's not a Christian song. They're very narrow. And so I started accumulating hundreds of questions about how do I deal with this, and how do I finish my project, and what about someone that said they were going to help me and they flake, and so I was answering all these people, and then I realized, wow, this is a book I could copy and paste a lot of the issues that come up for creative people. Right. And, so it's basically just an encouragement to someone to follow their own creativity. That's cool. And you're doing the second one, and that's for artists? Artist Guidebook, yeah. Okay. It's kind of Create Your Life, but it's even more in depth and even more things that came up from the first book. So it's kind of like the first book, but just more really encouraging people. I've had a few health things where, you face your mortality in the face, and I've had those moments with God where I thought, well, what do I want to do the rest of my life? And I came to two things. One is I want to get my own creative work I'm called to do done and out there. But number two is I really want to encourage other people with their own writing, their own creativity, and help other people. So those books, I just really want to, encourage someone else. Like, it means so much to me. Like, I have filmmakers that make a low budget film and contact me and said, I was inspired that you made your film on a shoestring and it did well. And so I went out and made my film I've always wanted to make. So that makes me feel really, really good. I think, to encourage others to do their work, to cheer other people on, I mean, I think that's what Christianity is about, really, is
what are the great commands? Love God, but love our neighbor, I had a theater professor friend of mine say, "You're very different for most Hollywood actors." I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I've met these different actors that you help them find an agent, or you advise them, or you recommend them for a part." And he said, "Most actors I know are very narcissistic, and it's all about just helping themselves." And it hit me, like, I thought, well, how else is there to be? It's, just to help other people. And maybe it's the pastoral thing in my DNA, where I still, even when I'm in the artistic work, I still really do want to shepherd and help people to find something good for them,
Yes. And is that part of your message, your goal, your mission for your Blog Talk radio show? You've had it for several years. You've done over 150 shows. Tell us about that, please.
Well, yes, I started my radio show in Pittsburgh on a big Salem station, 101.5, and it was a very big show in the Christian market. We would have these get-togethers for listeners, and I'd expect a handful of people, and it was like a couple thousand people. We had to rent very big halls and things like that. So it was very big in the Christian world. But the show has changed since going on to Blog Talk Radio, where I really realized I don't want to just talk to religious people. So I have a lot of celebrities that have come on. I try to address issues that make people have walls up against faith, and I want it to be a safe place. I want to, even like my Facebook wall, most of my Facebook friends, I've really shifted my life. My life used to be, I was just talking to 90% evangelical people. And there's just a difference when you're in that bubble, that Christian ghetto of the subculture, what I call the bush leagues versus the major leagues of playing in the real world. And so now, like, I try to post things on my Facebook wall that will lift people up and make them spiritually interested and can spiritually minister to them, but in a way that's not preachy. So the show's a lot different. I mean, my show in the early days in the Christian station, when it was on Salem, the big Christian network, it was such a different show compared to now. I mean, I think now, like, the audience is majority people are not from a Christian background that listen to the show.
But every show, television, radio, Facebook Live, it morphs, doesn't it, as we do it more, and the Lord leads us in a different direction or in a further direction than we had anticipated.
Yes, that's so true, Patricia.
It's just a normal part of it.
Yeah.
All right.
I love the radio show. It's just, I think, there's a thing about acting, which is the best actors are interested in the other actor. Like, for example, if an actor is very narcissistic and they're only thinking about their lines, that's not going to be, you're going to kind of, something will feel, even if you don't know the craft of acting, you'll feel something's off or something's not quite real. But if they're very interested in the other person and what they have to say, and it's more about listening and reacting and not just acting, the acting is so real and it's so good. And it's the same with interviews. Like, I am really interested in other people and in my guests, and I love that dialogue, like, I'm interested in you. I really like what you're asking me. And I mean, we've all had those guests that it's more of a monologue, than a dialogue. But I think when there's connection and interest, I mean, when I have people on my show, I'm just really interested in them. And I have had a lot of celebrities say, that was the best interview I ever gave. You're the best interviewer. I feel like a closeness or a spiritual kinship. But I think it's that I truly do love people and I'm really interested in them. And when you're interested, there's an old saying, an actor who's interested in the other actors will be an interesting actor, as opposed to the narcissist, like, how's the light hitting me and what's my next line to say? And they're not even listening to the other person,
James Garner is who has passed recently, but he's one of my favorite actors of all time. Wonderful. Everything he did, almost everything he did, I just love. And he used to say that when he first became an actor, that his first role was sitting. He was a judge in a naval, case, and his first job was just months and months and months. 90% of the play, he was listening because he was, as the judge, he was not the one with the dialogue.
It's true. Is that right? Wow.
And he just learned how to pay attention to what the other person was saying. Like, he was really interested.
Yeah. And he's one of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
And it circles back to the beginning of our conversation about his creative people doing a bunch of things. I always think I'm like Jim Rockford in that way. Remember how he always had like 10 different business cards? He always had this thing where he could make a new business card. That's me. I got so many boxes of different business cards. I got my, guitar teaching business card, and I got for our ministry meetings business card, and I got my filmmaking business card. I mean, just on and on, you know.
But yours are real. His were fake.
Yeah.
So now you've got a project going on near and dear to your heart. Let's close that by you telling me tell me everything you want to tell me about Canaan Land, please.
Well, Canaan Land, this film is turning out so great. I just watched the first rough cut, and it's going to be really powerful, I think, because it's going to, you know, be in all 50 states, you know, in the theaters. And Rebecca Holden, who's a wonderful actress, she was on the show Knight Rider. She was the pretty woman opposite David Hasselhoff that fixed his kit car. But she is a very solid Christian woman. And she plays this female evangelist who loves God and is really on fire. And I play this Elmer Gantry-ish evangelist who is just working it as a con. And, you know, send me $1,000 and you'll get your healing type of guy, where it's very manipulative. And he does all these fake miracles, you know, fake gold dust and feathers and things like that. And it builds towards this conflict where she finds out he's not really a believer and confronts him. And then we find out why he, you know, why he can't believe, which goes back to some of the things we talked about earlier, where he was abused by a preacher growing up. But the arc of the story is so powerful. It deals with so many things, like how do you know who you're following really is a true believer, and how do you know the difference between healthy faith versus toxic faith? And the story is done in such a way that, yes, it's a Christian faith-based film, but I think it's going to really be interesting to people who aren't Christians. And it will be controversial and has been controversial. I mean, there are some of my Christian friends who are offended by this story. I mean, they've said to me, you shouldn't say anything negative about preachers or church. That sows division. Touch not God's anointed, that sort of a thing. And I always try to remind them, well, Jesus did overturn the tables when they were stealing from the people in the temple also. And there's a lot of, for me, the preachers, some of these big televangelists that tell sick people, send me a large donation to get your healing. To me, that is so egregious and offensive to any rational person. It's so obviously exploitative. But the real, it's not just bashing the fake. It really will show the real love of God, the real healing power and love of Jesus Christ very strongly.
When is it going to be released? Do you know yet?
Yeah, well, we were shooting for Christmas, but I don't think we're going to make that if we really want it to be the best it can be. We're going to have to do a little bit more sound and color correction, so it'll be next year. But we probably will do some kind of first cut, rough, like work in progress screenings. The story is very Christmassy. In fact, we have a half dozen celebrities in the cast. One of them is a woman who played in that Christmas classic, Wonderful Life. You know, where Jimmy Stewart has that little daughter, Zuzu, and he fixes the petals in her flower. Yeah. And so she's one of the celebrities in the cast. But it is a Christmas story in that we see Sister Sarah preaching at Christmas time, and we see my character just doing his cons at Christmas time. But then flash forward a year later, the end of the story is Christmas, and him kind of encountering Christ for real. And I think women are going to relate to the story too, because Sarah has to deal with something many women have to deal with, and that is when you realize a man is not really walking, you know, spiritually in the right place, and you cannot be unequally yoked with him, having to cut those cords and deal with that. I think that's something many, many women have had to deal with too, and seeing her get the strength to do that as well. I think it's going to be it's very timely too, because my character is, you know, a predator basically. I mean, and that's in the news a lot right now. We have the Me Too movement, and we have a lot of scandals in the church, and but also it's a very redemptive story. I mean, there's redemption even for the lying televangelist preacher, that he can still repent and get saved. So I think it's going to be a very powerful film.
That's a great ending.
Yeah.
We circled back around and we came back to Christ and his redemption.
Yes.
I so appreciate you talking with me today. It was so interesting.
Well, thank you for your time and interesting questions.
Thank you, viewers, for joining us. I'm Patricia Durgin. This is Richard Rossi. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time.